Richard Murphy is Director of Tax Research UK and Professor of Political Economy at City University in London. So we'll have better railways, we'll have better broadband, but it might be mighty expensive if we go on holiday to Europe or go to America. What would the true impact be in your view, Professor? Good morning.
Well, I think that John McDonnell is wise to say that there is an issue, because I think there will be an issue. Let's look at it in two ways. The country will split into two parts on this. One will be the reaction of the City of London and the finance community, and the other will be the reaction of everyone else. If a government sets out to increase people's earnings, if a government sets out to invest, then that is good for the vast majority of people who have suffered low wages for a long time, and it's good for the vast majority of real businesses on the ground who will benefit from increased investment, more contracts, more work, and so on. So therefore, for the economy as a whole, in the long term, I firmly believe that Labour could deliver something that we haven't had, which is sustainable growth. On the other hand, for the City of London, which has traded on the basis of tax abuse, on the basis of financial speculation, on the basis of actually not really adding value but increasing wealth divide, then quite clearly Labour is a massive threat, and they will react. And in the short term, they will have that potential ability to do so. Now remember, we've had two runs on the pound in the last 25 odd years. Both of them happened under Conservative governments. One was in 1992, and of course the most recent was in 2016, which was after Brexit, when the pound fell in value by 20%. These are reactions which reflect, those two reacted to fundamental changes in the value of the pound in relation to the euro. Actually, a Labour government coming into office, there would be no fundamental change in value. The real underlying principles would be value would go up because there'd be more economic activity. So there will be a short-term issue. It may only last days, but John McDonnell is right to plan for it, and we would weather it, get through it. And the other side, people would look at the economic fundamentals and say, first of all, we can pay all our debt because our debt is payable in sterling, and therefore we can never go bankrupt as a nation because we can always cover our obligations in sterling because the Bank of England has that capacity to always do that. And second, actually, the policy is one for growth and reduced inequality, and that everyone around the world agrees is the basis for what we need, including the IMF, the World Bank, the OECD. All serious economic commentators say what we've got can't work anymore. Labour is offering something different, but it won't suit the city. That's all it comes down to.
Stay on the line if you would. I want to bring someone else in, Professor. Thank you for starting us off 11 after 7. Listening, Jonathan Davis, an economist and wealth advisor. We're hearing some of the advantages, albeit with caveats put forward by the Professor there. Your response. Good morning.
First of all, I want to correct a fact. There was no run in the pound following the referendum last year. Perhaps the pound moved 1 or 2%. My reaction is that they're making plans based upon what they believe global investors will do should they get into power. Well, that's very interesting, because it's generally accepted that a country's currency is representative of the strength of an economy. And if they believe that the pound will in fact crash should they get into power, in other words, the global investors believe that our economy will crash, then shouldn't they change the plans? Surely the plans are ridiculous if they expect the world to view us detrimentally. And finally, I just want to point out, it's so serious, these guys are dangerous. They are communists. Nowhere in the world, at no time in history, has communism actually helped the people.
OK, stay on the line. I don't know if it's necessary it's communism, what we're seeing. Just put a couple of your points to Professor Heath. You would have heard my other contributor there saying there was no run on the pound in the Brexit vote. It was a 1 or 2% alteration.
Well, that's really weird, because it actually fell by 20% and it's still more than 10% down. So I'm afraid the facts just don't support that. That's just not true. But let's just come back to this. Look, we just heard some hysteria talking about communism. Jeremy Corbyn has said, and John McDonnell has said, there's a fundamental role for the private sector in this. You know, in communism there isn't. So let's just stop the silliness. But it is this type of hysteria, this sort of political reaction that will create a run on the pound. And I'm not disputing it could, for a few days, create this type of symbolism. The city saying we're going to use our power to try and cause disruption. I'm saying it simply won't last, because the fundamentals will be that when business sits back and looks at the fact that it will be offered more contracts from a government who wants to invest, it will say, thank you very much, that's good for us, that's good for employment, that's good for profits. And that's exactly what it will be.
Lastly, thank you, Professor. Last point then, you're being hysterical, Jonathan Davis.
Yes, well, as Mandy Rice Davis would say, they would say that, wouldn't it? They're talking about going back to the 1970s when the trades unions ran the show. Many of you listeners will not remember the 1970s. We ran out of power. In the evenings, we were talking to our families using candles because they had ruined the economy.
Bit of a stretch to say we're going back to that, isn't it, Mr. Day? What makes you think that what you've heard from Brighton will take us back to those literally dark days?
Well, I don't know exactly the result of the socialist actions that they're talking about, but that is what happened when we had socialism.
Well, I think possibly that's what happened when we had rather undiluted trade union power. That's what perhaps one could point to. I get thanks to you, Jonathan Davis, thank you, and to Professor Richard Murphy as well.